All right, so Forgotten Hardcore Part 2. Before we get into it, uh you put out your band put out a little thing on a comp. You want to talk about that real quick? Just a quick little promo.
So we recorded a Go It Alone cover, one of our favorite Go It Alone songs off Vancouver Gold Statement. We recorded it actually back in October. We did it all ourselves, and we were actually going to use it to put it on tape to sell whenever we would be touring and playing some fests. But being that those aren't happening or are postponed, we were kind of just sitting on this song, and we found out that our label, Safe Inside Records, was wanting to put out a COVID-19 fundraiser comp, and they asked if we had any unreleased music that we'd been sitting on, and we were like, actually, we do. So we had that song, so we got them to put that on there, and yeah, I mean, it's a cool comp. All the proceeds, or I'd have to pull the actual page up because it's kind of long, but it's going basically like all you need to know is it's going to help those in need that are feeling financial hardships from this pandemic. And as far as I know, the label is matching donations or something like that for whatever they make. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. But it's a cool comp. There's lots of cool stuff on there. There's a new FOM song, a new Stepping Stone song. This band Sunset has or I don't know if it's unreleased, but a new song on there, a new Chemical Fix song, and then there's a bunch of other songs from bands on and not on Safe Inside Records.
Yeah, all good shit. I think that Sunset that has like members of Harvest, right?
Yeah, I want to say the guitar player was in Young Turks from Portland.
Could be. Don't know. I think that's one of the first tracks. It's pretty fucking good. Yeah, I haven't listened to the whole
That
thing.
rocks. It
Um,
kind of reminds me of parts of it kind of remind me of like old HopeCon, but like not quite as moshy, but still in that vein.
I can see it. Yeah, we're gonna talk about HopeCon, of course, in a minute because
Yeah.
that's on our list. My question, I think, and I wonder how many kids will hopefully like. I wonder how many young kids listen to Rejection Pact that don't kind of know the wave of hardcore that your band specifically pulls from.
I think I don't know. I don't think that we have like necessarily like the youngest listeners, but I think I'll look at like, oh, it's the age range in our like insights or whatever, and it's usually like 24 to whatever the fuck, like 29, I think. And then like I know there are younger kids, but I feel like a good bit of people that listen to our band probably know who Go It Alone is. Like, because I feel like what the style of hardcore we play, it's not super weird or anything, but it's definitely like of a certain like niche, you know? But that was kind of one of our hopes was, oh, we really like this band. Hopefully people that don't know who they are will check it out because more often than not, the same like 10 or 12 bands always get covered. Like,
Yeah,
I love Gorilla Biscuits. I love Sick of It All. I love Agnostic Front, etc., but I don't need to hear another band cover them. Like, it's cool. There's literally a million other bands you could be covering. So that was kind of our hope, and then that's like a big influence on our band. And then the fact that we obviously love like Northwest hardcore, so like paying homage to like regional stuff too. So
and I think it's cool because like a lot of this stuff, a lot of the newer wave, and a lot of these things that are in these comps are pulling from the Midwest mainly, and then like cherry picking stuff from the coasts, which is
yeah,
really cool. Which is because it's not that hard. I think obviously the East Coast hardcore has always had somewhat more of an access to than and like West Coast via like Orange County, but Northwest still I guess there's a little bit of cloud of mystery up there for most people who just get into hardcore, even no matter what stage you're in. So I think it's a cool thing to cover, like import, because Go It Alone, we'll talk about it, but is an important Northwest hardcore band.
Yeah, I talked to one kid. For some reason, I thought that he really liked Go It Alone, and I like messaged him and was like, "Yo, man, we threw that cover song up," and he was like, "I actually don't. I never got into them. Like, I'm from the East Coast, so I mean that might like they might have just slipped my radar or whatever." And I was like, "Oh, damn!" And like the more people I've talked to, like a lot of that Rivalry Records and like Northwest hardcore stuff, certain bands kind of like clicked over there, but I definitely see a lot of people on the East Coast kind of shit on that style, in my opinion, compared to East Coast bands that kind of sound the exact same. But
That's why I'm glad Dead Air still fucking exists, because like, so all the other like, a lot of the other podcasts and shows like talk so much about like, um, all the like important like heavy East Coast bands or and Midwest bands and early like in '80s punk hardcore bands, but like Kevin and Ian, when this show started, these bands like Go It Alone, Sinking Ships, um, Blue Monday, etc., were like the fucking bands. Those were the bands that, like, it was a hardcore show, but those were the bands being championed, like, in the main rotation of the show.
yeah, that's kind of, I mean, that was the first, like, I'd been to out of state, like, from where I was living at the time, I'd been to out of state, like, bigger, like, more, like, metalcore shows, but Northwest, like, hardcore shows, that was my first exposure to where I think that had a big effect on me and kind of, like, the kind of hardcore that I gravitated towards too, more in, like, aesthetics and just, like, overall, like, vibe, like, that's always, like, even if, like, a band wasn't necessarily, like, better or different, like, if I'd hear, like, a React Records band or, like, that's an example, it would always like stick with me way more, and I would always like, oh, this is fucking awesome, and there could be a band from the East Coast that sounds the same, and I'd be like, yeah, they're cool. So I mean, I get it on both ends, like the same thing I was saying with like a regional bias.
Yeah.
It is what it is, but I personally love these bands and like that sound.
So, part two of the Forgotten Hardcore episodes. If you didn't listen to part one, go to our Spotify, our Anchor, Google Play, and Apple Podcast. You can type in Dead Air Hardcore Radio, and or whatever you might be listening to right now, and it's there. We talked about a lot of like regional hardcore. A lot of it varies between like the early to mid 2000s, a little bit into last decade, but not much. We did a lot of mosh. We did a little bit. We ended it with a little bit of pop punk. As far as like feedback, a lot of people talked about, just because I used some pictures from the X Tyrant X shit. A lot more people were like all about. It's surprising to me, people who even listened were big upping Tyrant so much, because I guess I wasn't in a field of vision to like even pay attention at all. I looked back on some old like videos and stuff. There's a lot of like YouTube videos that say X Tyrant X, scariest mosh ever.
Football mosh.
Yeah, there's the football mosh, and it's there was a couple of those videos where it's just like I was very like confused on what I'm seeing, because there's a couple like ones like the view from the stage while I'm like doing it. There's one where I think that the vocalist gets in on it, and then somebody just like grabs a mic and just starts singing, and the singer's getting in on it, and I'm just like, I guess a lot of people have respect because of the football wash, and me, I still don't care.
Yeah, I mean, the comments and whatnot that I saw about the like episode and people bringing up Tyrant, most of it wasn't even about, oh, their music was cool. It was just, oh yeah, those videos and the football and the moshing. And I mean, it's cool. I guess it's cool to have your band be remembered for something over nothing, and like lost into the void of hardcore. But I don't know. I would like once you pass a certain age, that's just weird to me. Like not hating on fun, but you know.
Well, there was a time like my early year where it was like that was what it was all about, and sometimes in Seattle where it was just like 2006, 2007, even early parts of 2008, like the heavier hardcore shows were somewhat stupidly scary. Um, and that's all that some of those bands get remembered for. And like I feel like that memory doesn't have a lot of longevity. Like it's just like a funny video or for some people a shitty memory depending on what end you were. Like for me it was just like I just wanted to watch the fucking show.
Yeah, I think when you're younger too, that I liked the idea of like being nervous at a show and like, yo, when's it gonna pop off? Am I gonna like be like scared to mosh, or am I just gonna like mosh and hopefully like not get my ass beat? But then now as I'm older, I'm like, yeah, it's not really my vibe anymore, but at the same time, I'm not mad about it. Like I
No.
can see the appeal to a younger kid. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, man. It's like I'm gonna stand over here and you guys do your thing.
Well, there was some vibes in like Seattle where there was like that weird high school bully type thing where someone would just like pick on you and like they don't know who you are, you don't know who they are. There was this dude who ends up now he's like my friend. He like literally would just we knew nothing about each other. He just like wanted to pick someone out to fuck with, and I would end up at the bottom of a fucking big ass dog pile. A few.
I know how that is.
It was just what?
I said I know how that is. Like,
Yeah.
um, not really anymore, but I feel like there was a minute where it was like that. It shows here you'd have people kind of like target people and like, yo, I'm gonna fuck with you at the show, or for like several shows.
Yeah, so I was always like, "Fuck, this is like." I still went out. And I had no fucking problem with it, but it's like, "Fuck." I'm like, this is stupid because also people like look at because this person's targeting me. People will look at me like, "Oh, this guy must have done something," and I'm like, "No, I didn't. I just go to the fucking shows." So, anyways, moving on from that. Also, we talked the last episode we talked like about set your goals, like a little bit at the end, and I saw like a thing popping up, and I've been trying to like look up. I don't know the. So there was one of the singers like showed up, I guess on Tinder,
I
and
heard about that.
and he put his age is 29. I just like in my mind it wouldn't be like the craziest fucking thing that if he was like fucking 13 or whatever when they were on Eulogy. I'm not it wouldn't be the weirdest thing, but I don't think that's 100%.
Nah, he's definitely older than that.
Yeah, I thought
I'm,
cuz
I'm I'm 32, and they were a band when I was like, I got their demo when I was like 18, and I'm like, I mean, guess technically, I guess they could have been like 15 or 16, but I find that hard to believe.
I mean realistically I've seen the pictures of even like more current stuff. He's always kind of like looked like he was 15.
Yeah,
So
he still looks really young.
so but like come on, man. It's like that's a that because I didn't want to obviously I didn't want to fucking defend anyone, but I was just like I saw that I was like that's weird, but he does look so fucking young. But also some of the pictures that are on there, I have no idea how old they are too. They look, some of them are Warped Tour pictures, and they've been on so many fucking Warped Tours that it could be any Warped Tour between 2006 and like in 2012. So, which is
Yeah.
still 2012. That's a long time. So regardless, it's fucking long ago. So, anyways, that was a weird thing, and I couldn't like find his age at all. So I don't give a shit about that. So let's get into part two. Let me get out the list, and I think we're starting off. Everything pretty much at this point is like early to mid 2000s, I believe.
Yeah, we're starting on the fast punk.
Fast punk. This was so like this is like a 50% liked, other 50% just slept on because it wasn't, some of these I just were not on my radar, or I knew the names and just it wasn't what I was into at the time, and nobody talked about them enough for me to like go back and listen. So
Yeah.
started out with Internal Affairs. Always the before I even listened to them for the first time, I remember some friends making fun of the vocals and like really like and like doing like the vocal inflection. So I checked it out and I'm like, I actually love the vocals on Internal
Yeah.
Affairs.
They're mean. They're scary to me. Like it like legitimately sounds angry, and it's fast. Like they're really fast.
And then I don't know actually regionally where this band is from.
L.A.
Okay, I thought it was California.
Yeah, they're
Um,
Los Angeles. It has like the let's see. I'm trying to think if there's any members. Um, Dennis that plays guitar is in Berthold City now. Corey sang he was also in Carry On, played guitar. There was another dude. I want to say this guy Greg that was in Betrayed played bass in Internal Affairs. I think
okay.
that's fun. First time I saw him was actually in Seattle, and it was crazy.
Um, yeah, I know. I thought it was California because I've seen like the shirts and stuff. Like anytime I'm in California, there's somebody who I know who has talked about the band or have who has shirts from the band, or California people, a lot of California people selling, you know, old merch from the band. So that's what I thought. Um,
Yeah, they have one of the sickest intros where it's just like this is for you, LA, and they do like a drum build up and they hit like a stompy like mosh part.
yeah, this was one out of the few that I was like, yeah, I'm not mad at this. I like it, and the vocals are I wouldn't say mean, but they're to me, but they were genuinely interesting, aggressive for sure. Um, there's some me. We'll get to some bands that I think have mean vocals a little bit down the line, but this is a band I just fucking loved the vocals and everything just about this band. Really stuck out to me in a time that I didn't gravitate to a ton of punk influenced hardcore, but Outbreak.
Fucking incredible. They were like same for me. Like when I was like pretty heavy into like Eulogy Records type hardcore. They when I heard them, it immediately clicked. I think it's legitimately just because it was fucking super mean. The lyrics were very mean, and I was like, "Oh, this is definitely resonating with how angry I am all the time." To where the songs were short, they were catchy, um, really good for stage diving and like singing along. Um, they're one of those bands where I've seen people definitely like like we'll say the last like 5 years shit on them and be like, oh, that band sucked, like they weren't any good. And I'm just like, go watch old videos from them. Like they were big.
Well, and I think not a lot of people know that. Like, I feel like a lot of bands I see take vocal cues from bands like this, and a lot of people don't know it. But I honestly don't dislike a single record from this band. Even
They're
their
all sick.
even their last self-titled one was was really fucking good. I'm not opposed to well produced hardcore records as long as they're not fucking over produced.
The last record sounded good. It was like not that it was slow, but it was slower for them, but it was still fast.
And I'm a vocal guy, so I really liked how the vocals like kind of evolved in that self-titled record to where there was really like long drawn out powerful vocals in some of these songs where some of the other ones were a little bit like shorter fast burst punky yelling
Yeah.
punchy yelling vocals where like there was parts where he was holding out the notes and that's something I really like.
Same.
um yeah, and when I first heard Antisocial, I was like, that song is holy fuck yeah, this whole band, um one of the best of that era in my opinion.
Big agree.
So what's next on our list? Wake Up Call, don't know this one.
Kind of sounds like Outbreak. I think they're on Think Fast. I want to say the dude from Outbreak helped run that label. Um, it's cool. I mean, this is a band where if like I like them, but I don't really think that people have a reason to check them out necessarily. You know, like it was cool. It was moshy. It was fast. It was punk. Um, they had like one record, as far as I know. They weren't a band very long, but they came around right at a time where I was all about a lot of those Think Fast Records bands. I mean, that label's not even a label anymore anyway. But they were cool.
What do we got next? Lost my place.
Piece by Piece is next.
Piece by Piece. Saw them once, wasn't totally really into it at all.
I've seen them. Saw them once. I missed them the second time because we were looking for my girlfriend's cell phone at Sound and Fury because we thought we'd lost it. I think they're sick. Nick Jett from Terror, drummer, sings. I kind of feel like the rest of the band kind of like they've had like not a revolving door of members, but just because they've been a band for so long, kind of had different members here and there. But I think it's sick. It's not like anything complicated. It's just like fast paced hardcore. Like it's fun. Um, yeah, I mean, they're a band that I don't see people talk about as a whole, but I definitely see people from California that I know still constantly talk about them. Like, I want to say one of my friends was tweeting about them today. So I would say, like, kind of like a regional thing. Like we talked last time too. Some of these bands I think are just very regionally specific, and I feel like California loved Piece by Piece.
Yeah, I saw them. I went to a fest in Arizona, within these walls, and saw them. And out of the other bands that played, this was just a little bit underwhelming. Maybe just because of I don't know, the reaction I got was not as big as like for some of the other, even like the regional bands that played. But
I feel like I mean, I didn't see them until 2010, but like watching old videos from like Sync with Cali and stuff, I feel like they used to get like way bigger reactions when they first started. But yeah, I mean, they're a band I've definitely shown to people who like that style of hardcore, and it's been very hit or miss. But it hits for me.
know the score. Didn't never struck me. the first time I ever like heard this band, the description to me was a boring paint it black.
I don't hear that in the slightest at all.
And that was what it described to me. Did not sound to me like that at all, but still the boring part really stuck.
It just sounds like I think it's sick. Again, kind of like a wake up call situation. Like when I checked them out, I was like a sponge for like hardcore, and it was super fast, very angry. Like at the time, I really resonated with lyrics that were very like kind of fuck you, self aware type stuff. It was like that. They had very like drum heavy mosh parts, which are always my favorite. And it was cool. I mean, I want to say they were on Double or Nothing and like Eulogy. And at the time when I first heard them, I was definitely transitioning from like more moshcore stuff to like faster hardcore and more youth crew stuff. And to where I was like, oh, this is sick because it's still pretty angry and it's very heavy, but it's also fast and has like a punk leaning. So
I've has this band is this band forgotten? Trash talk.
I think with people of a certain age, not that it was forgotten, but it just never was. Like they're still huge. Like, but remember when they played Rainfest last time? It was cool, but they're definitely I don't think there were that many people inside when they played, and they were like one of the headliners that night.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of kids still they're for a younger generation, they're just a fun band to watch. Like even if you don't listen to the music, like I know people who like accidentally found them through like Odd Future and shit.
Yeah.
It's like a fucking like it's an experience, not as much of a it doesn't usually get those kids into hardcore, but they're like, oh, this shit's crazy.
They're even like I saw them. I mean, it was a while ago at this point. They played here with like Terror and Suicidal Tendencies, and there was a shit ton of people at that show. Not because of Terror and Trash Talk, but when Trash Talk played, like so many random kids were just like push moshing and like jumping around and like having a good time, and it was definitely like. I mean, I don't know this, but I feel like it was a lot of those kids. It was the first time they heard it, and everyone was just having fun. To where I think that they've always been a very infectious live band, and I think one thing that does hurt them from like being more, I guess, clicked up with like modern hardcore is like on Spotify they don't have like, in my opinion, any of the good records.
Yeah, the ones that
Like,
those and those records that are not there are the ones that got me into the band.
yeah, like I know at least for like our band, like we reference Trash Talk a lot, and looking at the age range of several people in my band, that's I think that's half the reason why. 'Cause it's like, oh, I really liked Walking Disease when it came out. Like that's like a really good hardcore record, and like Plagues, but I don't know. I mean, I maybe young kids like that might have been one of their first hardcore bands they heard because they had such a wide net. But I went like I think after that thread, I went and like looked on YouTube to like watch like recent Trash Talk videos, and the crowd definitely didn't look like hardcore kids, even when it wasn't like a hip hop show or whatever.
Well, I think it's also gotten weird because like the original like kind of Odd Future thing was supposed to be like a very underground like skate kid thing for hip hop for
Yeah,
random hip hop kids, and it blew the fuck up, and that helped for Trash Talk, but also all those groups are now or the people who are really popular from Odd Future are in like TV shows in like top 40 music and all that shit. And I feel like so that's really like separated to like where people don't even want to like talk about Odd Future, especially like they want to bury the fact that Tyler used to say some like questionable shit. Um, so like that whole like just Odd Future as a I feel like that whole thing that like doesn't even like hold a lot of weight in pop culture as much as the names like Tyler the Creator or Frank Ocean. So like I feel like it would have benefited Trash Talk to just move away from that in general.
Yeah, I mean, they're hardcore kids. I think it's sick that they're still a band and they're still like able to like do their own thing. I know they got super into like you're saying like skate culture and like have done like clothes and all that kind of stuff and branched out, which is smart. If you have the bandwidth and there's like like people like or not demanding it, but like or be interested in it, like that's cool.
Also,
Yeah, I don't know how much like kids in hardcore care about this band anymore. Like there was a point in time where you couldn't go to a show without seeing a bajillion of those fucking peace sign shirts, especially the Trash Talk tank top. And then just like seeing them in their heyday for like hardcore was fucking crazy. Like people were just beating the shit out of their bodies, like moshing super hard, like jumping off everything. Like it was sick.
when I got the chance to like go on tours, like I most of my random like touring or going on tours with bands was like between like 2012 and 2015, and like if we would go to a mall it would be so wild to always see the Trash Talk shirts.
Grammys.
Yeah, and I was just like, what the fuck? And now that doesn't mean shit. Like, so correct me if I'm wrong. So 2016, 2017 was like fucking Cancelvania for a lot of people and a lot of bands, and a lot of random bands got canceled for like crazy shit. I swear, in the midst of that, didn't somebody from Trash Talk get somewhat Twitter canceled?
I have no idea, to be honest. I mean,
tried
that
to
wouldn't
search it,
surprise me, but
couldn't find it.
I feel like as people, they're the type of band where if they got canceled, they'd be like, who fucking cares?
Well, and I think at this point, if they did, nobody cares now because like it wasn't important enough. Like, or like people have fucking forgotten and haven't jumped on canceling a lot of hardcore bands in about a year. So like, it hasn't been like, because there are still some shit you can look it up on Twitter, but like if that happened at all, it got erased. So
Yeah, Trash Talk's sick. Who cares? Like, um, and I feel like they're from an era, especially where like it just was like it wasn't as like PC, which like I'm glad people are more like politically like aware and like more conscious of other people, but at the same time, I think that back then it's like look and really see like was stuff being said maliciously or was that just like considered okay?
did
You know what I mean? Like old like watching old like comedy movies and shit like that. It's just like wild.
did anybody ever like get on Rival Mob for saying retard in one of the songs?
I saw someone talking about it on Twitter, and it was kind of just like one of those things like really look at this. Is this really what you want to get upset about? Like look take it with a grain of salt, like type of a thing. And I kind of feel like yeah, I mean I feel like a lot of stuff's just kind of like pick and choose your battles and like are they really the problem or is it easier to like get pissed off at someone within your community versus like someone who's actually actively coming out and calling people like slurs and crap like that.
Yeah. Moving on, next band, Swamp Thing.
Fucking rules.
I love this band. I love the
Big fan.
vocals. The first time I heard it, I was like, I love that. It was just like a a fast punk style with like stuff that could like with vocals that could fit really well, still on like a heavy band.
evil,
Yes, evil,
evil vocals.
evil. Like, because that was what struck me is like I could hear this. This fit. I think it's way more unique in the fact that the vocals were placed on this, on these style of instrumentals. Because like I feel like if it was like if they went slower and heavier, like it would just be like this is cool, but I think their approach was way better. I
What
think
was sick, they? I saw them a few times, and when you look at what they looked like and like what especially the singer looked like, and then what he sounded like, it was sick. Like he did not look like he should sound like that, like at all. It's like, if I remember correctly, like a smaller dude who like looked very normal.
yeah, they did get a little bit of a like I said, they did get a little heavier like sounding like their last little bit of stuff
The
with
last EP they put out definitely like has some sick mosh parts on it.
yeah, that one like felt more like appropriate to what they were doing, like a little bit like it's a little bit slower. Um and I thought from there they were going to get a little bit bigger when they got on 6131 cuz at the time 6131 they were pumping out some really good bands like in um 2011
When
and
I the first time I saw them, they covered Chain of Strength
that's weird.
to like give you a like they still sounded like they do, but it was definitely like a very like oh because they were like a straight edge band, but I was like oh it's definitely not a song I thought you guys would cover, but it was cool. They had a really sick vitamin water shirt that I picked up one year that I wish I still had.
Yeah. I yeah, this is a band I never got to see unfortunately. Um I don't know if I like at least the people I hung out in the Northwest. I didn't hear as much. I think I heard there's like one other person I knew that was like into this band, but that doesn't mean much because as far as like a hardcore kid, I went to a lot of shows like by myself. So,
They were definitely I feel like more popular on the East Coast, and then like I feel like a lot of kids in California liked them.
yeah, this band was
They played Sound Fury I think every year that they were a band. So
I can imagine this is like definitely my flavor of vocals that I I just love it. It's just these type of vocals have layers to them and they're interesting and I like it. It kind of seeps into my ears because it just like it's a little bit different and there's so much to offer than just a singular just like I do like shouty vocals but I like kind of like heavy layered drawn out vocals as well. Moving on, Colin of Arabia. Didn't care about it much back then. I like it more listening to it later on. It's it's rough around the edges, a little unpolished.
oh, yeah. The good record, in my opinion, the really good record isn't on Spotify, which sucks. Like the stuff they have on Spotify is cool, but the really cool shit ain't on there. They
Uh,
did a sick Infest cover. Um, I think I found out about them through the Boston Beatdown DVD because they were on it, and then they played here once with Black My Heart in Death Before Dishonor and Fight Like Hell, and they were sick. But I think the fact that they were very rough around the edges, I kind of feel like if you weren't from their area, I didn't know that many people. Everyone I knew that liked them was from like Boston area, and then I would show them to my friends, and they'd just kind of be like, "Yeah, this is cool, but this is kind of sloppy."
yeah,
I'm like,
it was
"It's like just dirty."
it had a charm to it though, and then it would be like sloppy, and then they would throw in some like interest, like weird, like in the middle, their guitars would go clean,
They
and
had weird guitar parts.
yeah, like weird clean guitar parts just like thrown into it. Which, yeah, like I said, I like it. I will not say love it, but I did like it.
Yeah, I'd
Um,
say the stuff on Spotify, like the record that's not on Spotify, I honestly do love. But I think one thing that helped is I had it on a burnt CD in my old car in Alaska, and it was in my CD book, so I just listened to it all the time. Like if I put that on, I'd probably still know all the words to it, and I haven't listened to it. I listened to it probably once in the last like 2 years.
so learn. I don't know shit about this band.
They're sick. I haven't listened to them in a long time. They were like, I think they played Sound and Fury '06. Um, but it was cool. I definitely think that unless you were there in that time frame, like I don't know why anyone would have heard of this band. Like they were very short-lived. I know a couple kids that like them, but they're older than me, so not a whole lot to say about that.
This one, I've had. There's been groups of people that have talked about it over the years, and I'd say less now over the last few years, but
But Justice,
Justice. Uh,
they they ended up not being fast by the end, but it was cool. I mean, I think that they were doing a sound that not a lot of other. When they started out, they kind of were playing. So they had like the locking out sound, but by the end, it was just like weird. Still locking out, but much more like super touch type stuff. And it was cool. I think that there's a minute where I saw a lot of kids rocking Justice shirts, like at fests and stuff, and I kind of almost feel like at this point, they're more of like a very niche type listener who likes paying a lot of money for merch.
I think that's just same with that locking out sound of just like
Yeah.
having like niche stuff that we'll talk about. There's more to come on this list. What else do we have? Look back and laugh. This band I didn't give as much listen to early on. Um,
Never did anything for me.
um, Moving on to some stuff I can talk about for a long time because all this shit was basically the shit that got me into hardcore in this during this time. So melodic / amazing core.
I had never heard the term amazing core till Axe to Grind. I don't know if it was an East Coast thing or a regional thing. I was actually talking with Jake about it the other day. It was always just hardcore or melodic hardcore, depending on like what band it was. But once they like described the term amazing core, like I definitely get it. And I don't even think all these bands necessarily fit into that amazing aspect, but at the same time, it's easier just to like kind of lump it in.
Yeah, I get, and some of these I wouldn't consider amazing core, but
Where else you gonna
most
put
of
'em?
them I like. So let's fuck went down the line.
If you want, we could even like run through like, 'cause I feel like a lot of these bands kind of somewhat sound the same. Not the same, you know what I mean? Like we could even throw like a few of them and then kind of talk about them like in a group sense, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it. I want to talk about this one first, just because like Sinking Ships was the first like melodic hardcore band I listened to in general. Dead Air is one of my reasons I know anything about hardcore and like the early show. And before I listened to Dead Air, because KGRG was based in Auburn, uh, they played a lot of Sinking Ships. It was the only like heavier band or like band that had like screaming that they played during the day because they had a song called Auburn, and apparently
Oh,
that was really cool. That was really cool to the KGRG people
I
because
bought their first that Meridian CD. That's the name of it, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I was like, um, I bought that CD at Hot Topic in Seattle, in '06. It was on display at the cash register at the mall, whatever the mall is that like it's downtown that had like the light rail or whatever run into it.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Oh, fuck,
Yeah,
I think that's Westlake.
and I remember so I was in town for like the last champion weekend, and um, they played that show, but I remember like we were at the mall, and we were just like dicking around, and I walked in there, and I was just like, how wild that this is just on display. I get that they're like a local band, but even still, like in Hot Topic, I thought that was cool, so I bought that.
Well, dude, at the time, I feel like my local Hot Topic was like there were kids that were still like had the plug on like hardcore shit. Like I would always like I got a blacklisted CD from there from some dude who was like, I think you'd really like this. Like I'd have a friend who would like give me like free, sometimes free and like really fucking discounted CDs
I worked
on
at Hot
his
Topic
dime.
for a long time. It
What?
definitely there was a minute where we got a lot of hardcore CDs, and then even like I bought a Judge shirt when I worked there. Um, I mean, they had all like the bigger metalcore and like Terror and like bands like that, but there's a minute where like whoever the buyers were for the company were like actually like buying hardcore because like it sold. I remember they sponsored one of the Hellfest stages one year, I think '04. But yeah, Sinking Ships was that's one of those like more I think they hold up way better than a lot of these other bands in this list.
It took me till like later on that I didn't realize that they were on that one of their records was on Run for Cover, and I didn't realize Run for Cover was going that fucking long. As
Dude,
a
when they first started, because that dude Jeff that runs it used to work at Bridge 9, and I met him whenever like at Warped Tour they would do like the Bridge 9 booth, you know. And I worked with the Boise date and was talking to him, and I like we were talking about like hardcore and stuff, and yeah, I didn't like because he was like, oh, I put out their like that record, like their first record or whatever, and then he's like, oh, I helped with like there's a couple other hardcore records. I don't remember what they were now, but I was just like, damn, you like have been doing that like that long, and because he was talking about Run for Cover then, he was like, yeah, I mean, it's just more of like a side thing at this point, and now that label's huge.
for real. Um, saw I saw Singing Ships 2 times, and then the last time I saw them was the last time they played, which was 2013, and
The Rainfest or whatever.
yeah,
So that
so
was,
it was
I
a,
saw their last show, their last like U.S. show was like at Sound Fury. That was kind of weird. Um, saw them a few other times. When I saw them in '07, they had a big fucking reaction. It was cool.
but yeah, this band I think holds a pretty special place in anyone who is like around around like listened to this type of music at the time, as well as just like people in the Pacific Northwest and Western Washington. Like I think this still holds up for people that are around. I think people who like maybe some of the more melodic Death Wish stuff, or the like the Touche Amores, or like some, and even just like newer Run for Cover fans who still like like a little bit of hardcore and a little bit of like the non-core, I think could get into this band.
It's actually like written really good. There's actually good lyrics, and the songs are fast. They're not super long. And one thing I liked about them is they didn't rely on like mosh parts.
Not at
Like
all.
they're in there if you like get it, but at the same time it's kind of like if you were looking like breakdowns are very like obvious like two-step like skank parts like you wouldn't hear it.
So with this band, like the vocals like are everything. Like the vocals could determine whether this band was a hardcore band or a post-hardcore band,
Oh,
like
for sure.
because of how melodic the instrumentals were.
Vocals sound like a hardcore singer.
But like you could switch up the vocals and do something post-hardcore-y, and it could go on top of some of those instrumentals easy.
Oh yeah. Even
Um,
if you added like scratchier vocals.
the singer from Shook Ones did a part in one of the
Oh, yeah.
songs, and that's probably better than all. I like that part that he did more than I like most of the Shook Ones catalog.
Okay, well now you're tripping, but that's cool.
I don't know, man. That's my take. I'm tripping, but like that part, I don't know. He hit the vocals perfectly on that song, and I really like that.
It's cool that the part he's singing on sounds like nothing Shook Ones ever wrote. So it definitely like is different, you know? And like I don't know, I think that's more interest like I think that's what at least for me like listening to that song like that it stands out really well and different just 'cause it's like wow this guy's voice doesn't really fit this kind of hardcore. But it sounds cool that it's so like weird.
Ruiner. I saw them one time, right at the end. Uh, it was cool.
Band is sick. I get why people wouldn't like them, but I think that they're incredible. Um, I
Like
remember when they were a band, they were definitely like people either really liked them or they hated them.
like most bands in this genre, like it seems like they started out with some fast records, and
Their
then
first 7 inch is so fucking fast.
inevitably either slow down or get more melodic, which is just seems like
Oh,
the progression of things.
yeah, like I think the best part about Ruiner was Rob had really cool, interesting lyrics, and they weren't necessarily like that was like the one thing with a lot of these like melodic slash like amazing core bands is like some of the lyrics were a little hokey to where like when you're like 18 to 20 it's like hitting a certain way but when you look back when you're older you're like yeah that's cool I can appreciate what this was going for but this might I don't necessarily like feel this way anymore. It's not as like I guess timeless of lyrics at least to me. I feel like Runer definitely was writing about stuff that was a little more applicable to like being older.
Which is something I think people kind of miss because a lot of bands and just even artists in general like stop, like they don't progress with their writing, or they stop playing, so like all their lyrics are pertain to that certain point in time. So
Yeah,
good
because well let's jump a little ahead just because of that statement. Set it straight.
love um their mosh parts are probably my favorite mosh parts of any of these bands. Like they have the best like breakdowns in my opinion from this group of bands, because it came.
Your metalcore roots are showing right now.
That's okay.
There's so there's so many 808 parts.
I love that.
It's sick. I like it, but it's like I listened to them a couple years ago and I was just like, fuck, I forgot just how like actually heavy this is. And I'm like, no wonder I really liked this band when I was like still writing super hard for like Black My Heart and like Since the Flood and like bands like that.
I liked how it would go. That I liked the clear and accessible vocals. I liked how it would get like fast and melodic, and then there's a one there's a one song, I think it's Callous, where it gets like super like heavy and chuggy and then goes into a ridiculous breakdown. And I've like, for it in my mind, like there are bands that do that shit and it's really corny, but I felt like they did it in a way where it wasn't corny to me, because I know that can be corny.
I would say the corny aspect about this band, looking back on it, is a lot of the lyrics are super fucking corny. Like,
yeah, it is for in that.
I still like them, but I mean, so a lot of straight edge bands sell out, It's cool. Shit happens. That doesn't mean I doesn't mean I wouldn't still like a record they wrote when they were straight edge. I think a lot of stuff is like a time and place thing. But some of the lyrics are just a very like obvious like these were written by a very young straight edge person who like at the time was so sincere and like earnest about the whole thing and like so passionate about it that like now when I listen to it I almost just kind of like laugh a little bit and I'm like damn this is kind of funny looking back on this.
I like most of those kids grew up and never looked back. Because I know like the whole thing of when they're breaking up was like one of them was studying to be a teacher.
Yeah, two of the dudes started a band. I think it was the drummer and the bass player started a band called The Separation, who were like a crusty. I don't remember if we talked about them on the other episode, but they were sick. But definitely was like the furthest thing from what Set It Straight sounded like.
Makes sense.
Like just like crusty, like the vocals more so like blended in with the music, and it like really long songs, very like post metal crust, played by like hardcore kids.
Yeah, this is one that I'm still okay with. Like there are some there are some corny shit out there, but out of the corniest, this one still like I still like can jam it.
Kids that like Set It Straight, I feel like fucking love Set It Straight. Like they were when I moved here, they were one of like the big like hardcore bands in Boise. Like almost every kid I knew had a Set It Straight shirt. They played here a bunch of times. Um, but then like my group of friends from Alaska that like hardcore, like no one listened to Set It Straight. And then a bunch of kids from here I know went to their last show, and that lineup for that show was fucking bananas. And show looked huge, like for like a fairly like regional hardcore band.
Yeah. Um so let's just bunch these next two together. I'll summarize my takes on them. Miles Away, The Effort. Miles Away. Um I I liked I always talk about this cuz like that I only play like a little bit of actual like music, so I always talk about the vocals cuz the vocals are the first thing I really pay attention to. Um I could see why a lot of people didn't care about this band. They're definitely, but I liked the over dramatic vocals, like where it was like super. It was. I could see where people would say this is too whiny and cryy. Um,
They
but
went, it's crazy. So like they started out being like very just like melodic, fast, mosh, like very moshy, like full on like breakdowns and stuff. And then they went the Defeater route. I feel like, and like you're saying, like they got very whiny sounding. I still liked it, but it was definitely like we learned how to write like a really sad, somber, melodic hardcore song versus like initially it sounded more like shit you would skateboard to.
and they kind of it was as if they understood the way melodic hardcore was going at the time, and
Oh, for sure.
they started like because one of their music video like their last thing was like 2014 2015, and their last like music video was all them on a Defeater tour, like were shots from them in big like
Saw that tour.
doing big stages. And
First time I saw them was with Outbreak and Cruel Hand. So just like think of just like that vibe.
yeah,
And the last time I saw them was with Defeater and Bane.
yeah,
So I mean that like you're saying that's like